In continuing my conversations with Arabian horse breeders, I welcome Greg Farrell of Mullewa Arabians in Australia, Jenny Kale of Kale Carho International, correct? And Jeff Wallace, my good friend Jeff Wallace, and birthday boy.
Yes, happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, Greg, tell us a little bit about the Mullewa breeding program and the horses that you have there at Mullewa Stables.
Mullewa commenced in approximately 1974 as more of a recreational interest for the Farrell family, and then progressively then over the next decade and a half we became more and more interested in breeding of Arabian horses, and originally imported horses to Australia, particularly from the United Kingdom, and it was a particular focus on Polish bloodlines from England through the stallion Gruyek, a Comet son. And by about the mid-70s, we recognised that the Arabians we were breeding we liked, but in fact we did not believe we were adding value to the breed. And so we essentially did an assessment of what we thought were some of the best breeding horses in the world at that time, and travelled to Europe and also to Egypt and then to North America, and ultimately Elasma Arabians purchased a Basque Sun Ambition, and that was in 1976, and from that moment we became truly committed to the breeding of the Arabian horse, and the stallion Ambition still holds an integral role in the foundation of Mullewa Arabians.
So you are a third generation Arabian horse breeder?
We have in third generation now.
As well as Jenny is
Yeah.
third generation in her breeding program.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And Jenny, again, you being a third generation, give us a little bit of history of
Well,
your
first of all,
breeding
thank you
program.
for having me. I really appreciate that, being involved. And my grandfather started with Arabians in 1939. He started with essentially domestic bred, a lot of raffles and raffles related. And then in 1962, my grandfather, father, and the LaCroix, Dr. LaCroix and Jean LaCroix, went to Poland and imported the first Polish Arabians directly from Poland into the United States, including Bosk and Dornava, who my dad showed the first Triple Crown winner as a mare. Then in the 1970s, Dad went to Russia, and he got very involved in the Russian Arabians and importation there. Muscat and Ariadne, a series of those. In Muscat, he also showed in 1980 the first stallion to win the Triple Crown. So my dad and grandpa were essentially rock stars. They were awesome and very, very influential, as well as wonderful, wonderful people. And I hope that I can carry on some of that. We've gotten engaged in going back to Tursk and essentially sending some of the bloodlines that have been developed here in America. Some of the mares that we have one mare, she's the 9th generation of Kale breeding, and she has a full sister that we sent a son of over to Russia to be able to engage a little bit more there, which is nice. So it's kind of coming full circle, which is a blast for me, hearing all the stories.
definitely coming full circle.
Yes.
And for you, Greg, in your travel, well, what's funny is maybe your past has met Jenny's past somewhere at one of those famous
I think
state studs.
very much so, as we were touching on earlier, through the stallion Nabor that was imported into the United States, and Nabor's son Kabor side Karma, who has created an extremely influential family of horses at Mullewa Arabians.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough to go down to Mullewa in 2009, and I saw a stallion named Class that they have down there that's a Kapor, and he's just that beautiful, classic. How old is he now?
He's 8.
He's 8?
Yeah.
Just classic, beautiful gray Arabian stallion. One of the things that you go down and you look in the pasture, the green grass, and you just say, okay, this is why we do this. So it's just lovely to be able to be engaged in that.
When you look back at the horses from the past, from each one of your family's breeding programs to the horses of now, what qualities do you see have come back and are coming back, or aren't there anymore?
Well, I think one thing a lot of people talk about is sort of the lack of structure of horses today. You know, we don't have the same level of quality structure, and I think that if you look back to the past, Bosk was an exceptional influence in everywhere. I mean, Mullewa in Australia obviously has a lot of Bosk influence. We have quite a bit in through our Tornado line, which brings in Silverdrift from Crabbit.
Sure.
And Bosk was the perfect complement at the perfect time for the Raffles horses. I mean, you had these sort of small, beautiful gray mares and horses, and he added in a quality of structure and movement that was lacking. And my opinion is, of course, that the Russians then built on the Boss stock that we had, but I don't think that influence can be undermined in any way. What do you think, Greg?
We imported the Barsan ambition out of the Commodore de Bintambara, and he had a profound influence on our program.
And when was that?
That was he arrived in Australia in 1976.
Oh, okay.
And so his contribution to the program was one of, as Jenny mentioned, about putting structure on the progeny, but also athleticism and trainability, and a sensitivity to the horses that allowed for them to exhibit to my true Arabian charisma, horses that carried good tail carriages, that loved themselves, but were also highly trainable, and so could both perform in the halter arena and the performance arena as the same horses. And we've found now 7 generations into our breeding program those same attributes are the attributes we continue to look for in our Arabian horses, and the refinement through the pole, flexion through the polar neck, so horses that are truly athletic, but truly Arabians.
Well, and I think that's what Greg's saying is a very important point for people who aren't exposed to Arabians. I think that, Jeff was involved with Lasma and the Boss horses, and moving forward, I mean, he can probably quote horses that I've only seen in photos, which is, a phenomenal gift to be able to do that. But for people who haven't been involved in horses, I'm obviously 3rd generation in 1939. My first word was horsey. It wasn't mama or daddy, and my dad thought that was great, and my mother just kind of went, oh, here we go. So it's kind of been, an interesting thing for me, but I've been indoctrinated in it, as opposed to people who haven't been involved. And what Greg was saying about trainability with Arabians, they have this reputation for being crazy in some circles. And I think that anybody who's actually had an Arabian or been an Arabian, you see a lot of people that are just riding trail horses, and they say, oh yes, this is my old Arabian gelding, or my old Arabian this. And Arabians, going back from being in the tents with the Bedouins and being really a life or death. I mean, if you rode an Arabian mare into battle and it wasn't a good one and she didn't like you, you probably weren't coming out again, Right. Oh, and so there was a level of relationship there, and they were used for warmth. The desert gets cold at night, and the mares were brought into the tents, and the family used them for warmth, and they were taught to lay down, and the stallion was left out as a guard dog. So if anybody approached, they'd also then, in that case, have their, essentially their ride to be able to ride out and meet the threat and protect their families. And the Arabian horses have a level of people sense that I think that a lot of other breeds don't, and I'm involved. I have quite a few half Arabians. When I stand up, I'm 5'11", and so sometimes I ride half Arabs. I also ride half Arab geldings because it's the only thing my dad wouldn't breed whenever I was a kid. So if I wanted a riding horse in February, I'd better make sure that I had something he can breed. So and Jeff's laughing because he knows my dad, and it's kind of a family joke.
That's very cute.
It is. It's the relationship. If you walk into the barn with an Arabian that's eating, they're going to pick their head up and say hello to you. Sure. And a lot of other breeds are going to go, I'm eating my food, please go away.
Well, I think that's the same thing when I have guests visit my farm, especially guests who are not exposed to Arabian horses.
Right.
And we walk out into the pasture and the horses approach us.
Yes.
People always make the comment like, wow, they're like dogs who will come over and want to be petted, and they expect to have to go to the horses that are there in the paddocks as opposed to the horses coming to us.
Right.
Now, a question that I think is quite interesting in regards to the past.
Yes.
Because I know, Jenny, when I first came to the Scottsdale show and I visited Carho, it was, and here we are in Las Vegas with these amazing hotels that are designed and furnished over the top. And that was kind of how Carho was.
Yes.
It was
the show place.
And it was like, as I'm walking through Carho with its, just the barn was the white stucco and the topiaries everywhere and the fountains.
Yes.
I really miss that.
Right.
in the industry, and even the horses, just walking through the barn and reading the nameplates of all the famous horses that were there at that time and had been there. If you could bring back one of those famous horses that you've met or have never met, which one would you bring back? And why?
Ooh, that's tough.
Oh, that's an easy answer.
All right, go ahead, Jeff.
No, I want to hear your answer.
No, if it's the easy answer, I'm going to ponder. I'm going to use Jeff's influence for my thought.
I would say,
what about for you?
So, yeah.
Nariadnia would be her answer, I would think.
Yeah,
Because
I would say
she was stunning and beautiful and a great producer, and with being able to do embryos today, that would be my.
This is a very true
that would
point.
Be my
This is
pick.
a very true point.
I think as an individual Muscat, I think
Yes.
he was a extraordinary
And I
horse.
did get to see him.
So-
And again, that was one of the horses that I had only read about in the magazines and books. And for me, I loved his beauty, his very unique marking on his forehead. I think that for me, as a new person to the industry, chestnut sort of became my favorite color at that time. And for you, it would definitely be Muscat.
Yes, he had a great presence. In his prime, he was as good an Arabian stallion that's been born.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have to, as a little aside, a sort of funny story about this. We're obviously all Arabian people. We have a deep love for Arabians, but I think we also have an appreciation for other breeds. I know that you have some beautiful stallions down there that you do dressage with.
Yes, the warm
that you've
bloods,
imported.
yeah.
Yes, beautiful. And but Dad, whenever he was importing Muscat in, he went ahead and had him stop over from New York, because by then they had traveled by truck, and he had him stop over at one of the big thoroughbred farms, and he called down and he kept calling every hour as the horse arrived. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be this crazy horse owner, but as the horse arrived, and finally it got to the point where the trainer was like, okay, son, I will call you whenever your horse, in his head he's probably, oh, here we go again, And as soon as the horse arrived, he called him. He's like, son, and the trainer called him and said, I don't know anything about Arabian horses, nothing. He said, but that is the prettiest horse I have ever seen.
Oh.
And Dad thought, thank you, and
Yeah.
and he has all four legs, and he's walking around on them.
There's something to be said for, I'm not sure about Greg's horses, but I know with your horses, not very many people in this country have had an influence of Crabbit blood like you all have had. And you all have had tremendous success from Silverdrift to Silhouette, not Silhouette, but Silwara.
Yeah, Silwara.
And then the Crabbit blood that lives very strongly in the Russian horses. That's pretty amazing, because not many people have had Crabbit experience, let alone to the depth of success that you all have. The other thing is, I think when we were talking about the promotion of the Arabian breed, I mean, these two people are amazing examples of that, to have the generations and keep coming back. And I mean, and I know Greg has been through, like you were saying, the Aladdin Bosque horses, and then those you had to do something to those to make them a little prettier, and all of that kind of stuff. And I mean, that's so tried and true. Both of these people, to say so much for this breed, which just draws us all. I'm amazed when I go to horse shows and I see people who have come back. People just cannot stay away from this breed. When I graduated from college, I left it and for 10 years probably, but thought about it all the time and came back. And so I'm really impressed by that with both of you. That's free promotion for this breed.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's interesting. You said about Carho and how beautiful it was. Dad, whenever he was in undergrad, actually, at school, thought, if I could build any Arabian horse farm, what would I build? And he started modeling it, and he started designing it whenever he was in his 20s, not really ever thinking it would ever come about, but that was sort of where he was in his free time. If I could have something, where would this be? And whenever my parents were first married, he was just finishing up Carho, and my mom, would say, she'd go to get a cup of coffee and the sugar cubes would be gone because he'd be modeling out of sugar cubes. And she's
funny.
just going, what did I get myself into, you know? And
So I see where the white color came
yeah,
from.
exactly, everything. So,
Good thing it wasn't brown sugar.
right, exactly. That'd be kind of blended a little bit, wouldn't it? Kind of ruined the effect. But it's, you know, and Dad, they poured 4 columns a year in Carho for 10 years
Wow.
before they got everything done. Yeah, I mean, they really just putting everything together. And it was, I was young whenever Carho got sold. And so I don't remember a lot of it. I'd have to say, going back to Jeff's point on the Crabbit horses, you know, you go back, I mean, Crabbit Stud was established by, you know, the daughter and granddaughter of Lord Byron. I mean, one of the greatest love poets in the world. And what breed did they choose? You know, and who did they get involved with? You know, and Crabbit is, you know, the name of the stud farm in England. And they essentially were the ones that imported the horses from Egypt and began the Arabian influence in Europe in the 19th
So
century.
strong.
Yeah.
Right.
So strong.
And the horse that you mentioned, it's a toss-up for me between Ariadne, who was gorgeous, but Silverdrift was
Amazing.
Oh, and I obviously never got to see him because he was. We have our family, and I think Greg does this as well. We try to breed what we call a left and a right hand, right and left hand, and our goal is to have our type and our prettiness that maybe doesn't have the same level of structure, but also breed it to something that has structure in order to get the next step up and hopefully get the best combination. And Silverdrift was just this incredible, big, gray, dappled, just. Oh, I see photos and I just go, oh my goodness, I just.
Your grandfather told me when I showed Zagrobla, your grandfather took me aside. I did not know him.
Right.
And he said, son, that mare looks exactly like Dornaba.
Really?
Yeah, and with a big smile on his
That's so
face.
cool.
And it was
Yeah.
really cool. It made me, she was such a gorgeous mare.
Yeah.
And he said, boy, that really reminds me of having her and winning with her.
So
And
cool.
yeah, really
So
cool.
cool.
Yeah, I was really touched by that.
And Grandpa passed away at 98 in 2007. And he went to the Scottsdale show and he was honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award, and he passed away a couple weeks later. And he said, you know, it was kind of a sad thing for me because he and I were very close, but he said, you know, I've now accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish in my life. And, you know, passed away 3 weeks later. And I just think to have that level of dedication and love for the Arabian horse is amazing, that is your penultimate achievement, you know? Really amazing. So
Very special.
yes. And there's a Zagrobla offspring showing here at the show.
She showed yesterday.
So yeah, she did very well.
She
So
was
it's one of
very
those-
wide-eyed.
Right, exactly. You know, and you know, Greg has some horses, and I think one of the things I really respect about Greg is that, and I don't know Greg well, but he's gone to a lot of different places and looked for the best of wherever it is, and it doesn't matter to him if it's straight this or pure that or any of this thing. I mean, he's looking for a good horse, and I think that. You know, I have some straight Russians, and I'm sure Greg has some pure Polish, and you obviously have straight Egyptians, but there's also the ability to look at these horses and say, okay, but what's the next step on the overall gene pool?
Sure, of course.
And I think that's really wonderful to be able to see and be able to take the best of the best from everywhere. I mean, Greg has said, you know, as he's speaking, you know, we went to the United States, we went to Egypt, and you know, the other side of it is just that you meet so many amazing people in this industry.
Right.
And I mean, how often would you be able to meet somebody that, you know, is very successful in his own right in Australia in a business situation when you're, you know, a 27-year-old American kid, as I am? I mean, that's amazing. I mean, what's the common denominator?
There's a breeder that taught us a lot, I think. And not that he was the only one who bred this way, because he's not, but he was very high profile, and that was Wayne Newton,
Yes.
who bred really amazing horses that have bred on, and all he did was breed pretty horses.
Yeah.
That was
exactly.
it. I mean, he would pick stallions that were beautiful. I mean, the ability to use a Tanzir, most people would just bypass that horse,
Right.
you know, and especially in those days. And he really taught us a lot, I think, about breeding pretty horses, and just like what you were saying that Greg does. I mean,
Right.
you just bring in pretty horses and breed them, and you'll breed pretty horses,
Right.
you know?
And Dad met Wayne, I want to say in the 1960s or 70s, I'm not sure which one, they were at a show in California and ended up rooming together. And he said, you know, he's a great guy.
Oh,
and he's,
yeah.
and I
He
think,
did a lot for this breed.
And I think that's, you know, and the Arabian horse has been lucky to have a lot of ambassadors that are, high-profile people. But I think that one of the biggest misconceptions is that Arabians you have to spend $300,000 in order to have a good Arabian, and that's not the case. I mean, our stud fees are 1/10 of what good thoroughbred horses are for some of our best ones.
Right.
And same thing with quarter horses. And I think that there's a mystique around the Arabians, which is both wonderful because they are living, breathing works of art, but also on the other hand is a little bit sad because a lot of people feel like they can't have one, even if they sit there and admire it. And I hear from a lot of people, and I'm sure you get this a lot. Oh, I never thought I could own something like this. Oh, I never thought I could own something like this. And I think if you have an interest, and a lot of people, if you come up and say, oh, I thought your horse was beautiful, can you tell me more about him? We're happy. I mean, we're here to talk about what we love.
Well, and I think it goes both ways in regards to, people. I mean, we obviously have, like you mentioned, Wayne Newton.
Yeah.
Wayne Newton, obviously a very flashy individual.
Yes.
I mean, his career as Mr. Las Vegas.
Exactly.
He wanted something that was different.
Right.
And actually, for me, that is what attracted me to the Arabian horse. I wanted something that was a little different.
Right.
When I first started showing horses, my brother and I showed saddlebreds, and I love saddlebreds.
Right.
They're amazing horses to ride and to show, and if you've been to a saddlebred show, that talk about crazy.
Right.
That's where geldings sell for $500,000.
Right. Exactly.
And I bred one of the most successful half Arabian country pleasure horses. Central Park was her name. And
that was beautiful.
Before she passed away, she had, I think, 17, 18 national titles.
Yeah.
But she was a half Arabian.
Yes.
And again, I'm not saying anything negative about a
Right.
half Arabian. It's just something about the Arabian and its beauty and its uniqueness. And for me, I am a person that I do like unique things.
Yes.
I like different.
Yes.
And that's what kept me coming back. And the same with seeing horses and the way that the breed has progressed.
Right.
And what we see here now. I have to say, here at the Breeders' World Cup in 2012, the horses and the collection that you see here today, the mares and the fillies that show,
like Fabergé eggs, kind of.
they were, I mean, it is the best I have seen here in the 6 years that we've been putting on the show. So I'm really happy to see, as a breeder and as someone who is in love with the Arabian horse, I am very happy to see the breed moving forward in a very, very positive way. Seeing the beauty, the faces, the big eyes and the big nostrils coming back.
Yes.
Greg, when you travel all over the world and you visit other breeders' farms, is there one special thing that you're looking for when you're viewing their foals in regards to pedigree or type? Or?
From our perspective, well, we're looking for usually mares or fillies that we believe are capable of creating mare families for our farm. And so horses that could be complement with their phenotype and genotype with our stallions or with our overall breeding program. And so to our mind, the strength of breeding Arabian horses is breeding females or breeding through females to create mare families so that you're able to establish a greater consistency in each generation. And I think that's the true strength or benefit of being a breeder of Arabian horses is breeding families of horses to create long-term consistencies of the types of qualities that you most admire.
Very good. Well, that's obviously our sign that the show is about to begin. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.